11 things to do immediately after an EMP strike. Now you might want to write this down. Now most people think that an EMP is just a movie trope, but it isn't. Both UK and US intelligence services last year in 2025 both confirmed that many of our adversaries have this technology right now. Just one single high altitude blast up there in the sky could take out the entire UK power grid for months, years, might not even could take out the entire UK power grid for months or even years. It could be a very long time before we get things back online. Now if you're not ready in the first 60 minutes, you could easily be part of the 90% that won't make it. So we're going to start off then with step 1, the confirmation. First things first, don't panic, confirm. Power outages happen all of the time. But an EMP, that's different. Step outside, a car alarm's going off, a house alarm's going off. Is it silent? Have cars stopped dead in the road? Does your phone work? Look around, see what other people are doing, how they're reacting. Check your car, see if it starts. If your car won't start, the neighbour's car won't start and their neighbour's car won't start. But they were all running this morning or even yesterday. That is a dead cert sign that we've been struck by an EMP. All cars post 1970 are not going to work due to their electrical components. Check your small technology, your phones, your laptops, anything like that. If they don't work, it's another sign it's an electromagnetic pulse. Help won't be coming for weeks, even if at all. This is going to be your sign to move right now. Step number 2, the water race. Now you've got a 30 to 90 minute window before the taps go bone dry. City water depends on electric pumps. Once they fail, all you're going to be using is the leftover pressure in the pipes. There ain't going to be any more pressure. Fill every pot, every container, every pitcher, pot, cooking stove, bathtub, that's an important one, that you have got, and do it now. This needs to be your priority. Your bathtub alone will hold 50 gallons, and if you've got a posh house so you've got more than one, get them filled. Your pro tip here then guys is to go to your water heater and shut off your intake valve immediately. If you don't, that water is going to drain back out when the city water pressure drops, and you don't want to lose that water. This tank has 30 to 50 gallons of water, and this is drinkable water. A family of 4 needs 4 gallons of water a day, bare minimum, just to survive. If you can grab that extra 50 gallons in the first hour, that's going to set your family up with 2 weeks of life, while everyone else is fighting over a 12-pack of water down the local Asda. Step number 3 is food triage. Your fridge has just become a countdown timer. You have got about 4 hours before your fridge basically becomes a metal cabinet. Stop opening the door. Every time you open that fridge door, you're losing about 10 minutes of cold time. It's not worth it. Do a fast triage and eat the perishables now. Things like ground beef, sliced meat, eggs, anything that's going to go off fast. Now your freezer, that's a little bit more of a vault. A full freezer can stay frozen for 48 hours. A half full freezer, 24 hours. Make sure you fill any space in that freezer with water bottles. They'll turn into ice packs and help keep your freezer colder for longer. But just like your fridge, do not keep opening it. You're going to lose that cold air, and that cold air is precious. Step number 4, fire safety and cooking. Now how are you going to eat that food from step number 3? Don't even think about using your gas stove inside. I'm talking about the camping types, unless you are 100% sure that your ventilation is adequate and safe. Unless you are 100% sure that your ventilation is adequate and safe, most people in this situation are going to go straight to the back door barbecue. I'm going to be outside on the barbecue, using up all the wood and all the coal that I've got left before I start using my little gas canisters on my stoves. You do, however, have to remember that the smell of meat cooking travels, and it travels far. This could be the dinner bell for hungry people when they don't have any food in their cupboards. Now if you've got things like jet boils and camping stoves, they need to be used in a well ventilated area due to the gases that they give off. It's also beneficial for stealth cooking. If you've got a shed, you could go in there and open the doors and windows and cook in there. Might be a bit cold, but it's a lot safer than risking burning down your house. Save your food, save your fuel, cook in bulk and store it in thermal containers if this is an option. Step number 5, secondary lighting, the stealth rule. Once the sun goes down at night, the world is going to be a darker place than you have ever seen it before. You need to gather every flashlight, every head torch, every candle that you've got in your house right now. But the vital tip, guys, keep a low profile. If your house is the only one glowing on the block like a Christmas tree, then you have just made yourself a target. Use red light filters or low lumen lanterns in indoor rooms only and stay away from windows. Black them out with black bags and gaffer tape if you have to. You want to see, but you don't want to be seen from the street. Check your batteries now. If they were in a device and stored away, they may have leaked and ruined that device. You need to know before it gets dark. They also might have drained from the EMP. Now, some people say that things like torches will still work after an EMP, especially if there was no batteries in them. But it's not something that's really been proven. In this situation, it's a case of try to find out. If they work, they work. If they don't, then you're relying on candles. Always try and keep a stash of hand-cranked backup lights as a backup. Alright then guys, how many of you have actually got a 48-hour supply of emergency water and food? Let me know in the comments below. What have you got, and do you think it's enough? Where can you improve? Let's have a chat. Step number 6 then guys, your medical and first aid audit. Triage your meds. If you or a family member relies on insulin, you need to refer back to step number 3 regarding your fridge. Use small insulated bags as well. They're very helpful in this situation. Beyond that, pull out your trauma kit. In a grid down situation, a small cut or an infection from a small cut, like a paper cut or a blister, can become life-threatening very fast. Hospitals are going to be overwhelmed or dark, and they are not going to want to deal with just a simple cut. Get your antibiotics, your bandages, your first aid kits and your tourniquets all in one place. Make them into an easy to go grab bag. Keep a few stored somewhere else just in case someone robs them. Remember guys, you might want to look up human medication versus animal medication. In the UK it's not easy to come by things like antibiotics, but a lot of animal medication is very, very similar or the same to what we take as humans. Step number 7 then, sanitation, the 2-bucket system. This is the part that nobody wants to talk about. However, it is one of the biggest killers in long-term grid down survival situations. Waste. Now if the water's out, stop flushing your toilets. Unless you've got a swimming pool in your back garden and you're carrying the water in by buckets, just don't do it. 1 or 2 flushes when there's no water there is going to back up and make your house unlivable. You need a 2-bucket system. 1 for solids and 1 for liquids. Use heavy duty bin bags and either cat litter or sawdust to manage the liquids and the smell. Disease is going to spread faster than starvation in a crisis. You only have to look at the 18th century to understand how disease wiped out millions of people. If you don't have a plan for where your waste is going to go, you're not going to last 2 weeks, and be careful where you bury it as well. You don't want to be too close to a water source. Step number 8, home security and hardening. Now the first 24 hours are usually going to be the calmest. Everyone's confused, they're wandering around aimlessly or just generally trying to get home because they work 20 miles from home and the car doesn't work. By 72 hours, desperation has set in heavily. You need to walk the perimeter of your house, lock every window, make sure every door is locked, your gates are closed and that your home is secure as it can be. If you've got a garage with an electric opener, pull the manual cord and make sure it's locked manually. Otherwise, thieves can just lift your door. If you've got plywood, get it ready. You don't need to board up yet, but you do need to know where your wood and your tools are. Security isn't just about tools, it's about making your home look like the hardest, most inconvenient, waste of time object to break into. You want people to go and break into easier targets before they even consider trying to break into yours. Step number 9, the paper map and bug out routes. Forget GPS, that's gone. If you leave your home, do you know the back roads? Do you know how to travel from one location to the other using several different routes? Not many people do without GPS. You need physical, paper, topographic maps of your local and wider areas. You need to know several different ways to get home from work, just in case. Mark your primary, secondary and your last resort routes and learn them. If the main highways are clogged with dead cars after an EMP, which they're likely to be because don't forget, bang, everything comes to a standstill and there are going to be accidents all over the place on those roads. You need to know how to navigate through the woods or the side streets on foot. If it isn't on paper, it don't exist. It is that simple. Step number 10, communication and the Faraday mystery. Your iPhone's a paperweight and your Wi-Fi is gone. Now, if you were one of the smart ones who kept a radio in a Faraday bag, this is the time to pull it out. We'll talk more about Faraday bags in a moment though. You're looking for an emergency broadcast system. Don't expect local news, you need to look for high altitude stations. And always, always write down what you hear, because we forget things. That is important. Remember Chinese whispers? Yeah, it's a little bit like that. Information is going to be your most valuable currency to start with in a blackout. Everyone is going to want to know what's going on. If you don't have a radio, then your goal is going to be to find the person in your neighbourhood that does. Communication is key. It's not just about listening, it's about knowing which ones of your neighbours you can actually trust. Step number 11, community and the Handshake protocol. Build your tribe. You can't survive an EMP alone. Once you've secured your house, you've checked your food, you've checked your water, go and talk to your neighbours. But never tell them what supplies you've got or how much. What you need to do is just check in. Hey, I've got a plan for water. Have you? Have you got a plan for food? You know, that kind of thing. And then you need to ask, do you want to coordinate security? Now, they might not want to. They might think the power's coming back on in a minute. This is where you can educate them about an EMP, what's happened and what's likely to be happening. In regards to security, you could have one person sleeping, one person awake. It's the only way that you're going to get through the first watch. If somebody's trying to attack your house or your family or your neighbours, you need to know about it fast. Trust here is going to be your biggest barrier to cross. So this is your call to action then, guys. The 90% statistic that I mentioned at the start of the video, that doesn't have to be you. You've got the list, you've got the steps. The best time to prepare was 10 years ago. The second best time to prepare is now. Now, if you found this video helpful, save the video, download it. Share it with the people that you care about most. When the grid goes down, information like this that you've watched beforehand can mean the difference between life and death. Now, I've put a full checklist in the description down below. You just need to download it, print it off and put it in your emergency bag once you've got it all ticked off. Now, stay safe, stay prepared and enjoy the bonus section coming up right now. The £20 DIY Faraday cage. Full disclaimer though, guys, if you don't make it right, it ain't going to work. You need to do it right. Now, before you went, I wanted to give you a bonus tip that's going to enable you to be able to save your most expensive and treasured electronic gear. Things like radios, walkie-talkies, phones that have got pictures on, just in case you want to look back on them at some point. Or a tablet that has got a multitude of downloadable survival books on it. While it's best to have the proper versions, this could be life-saving. Okay, so you're going to build yourself a Faraday cage. What do you need? You're going to go to a hardware store and you're going to buy yourself a galvanised bin. And it needs to have a tight fitting lid. Now, Faraday cages work by distributing the electromagnetic charge around the outside of the container, leaving whatever's inside untouched. That's the theory anyway. They have to be made right. You also need to get yourself some insulation, and this is the part that people mess up on the most. Your electronics cannot touch the metal of the can. They just can't. They'll be fried if they do, because the charge will just go straight through the can, straight through the electronics. It's that simple. First of all, you're going to line the inside of your metal bin with cardboard. Then you're going to line it with rubber, like the type of mats you get in the back of trucks and things like that. Then you're going to line it again with cardboard for extra measure. You need to place things like your backup radios, laptops or iPads with family photos if that's what you want to keep. If you've got hunting rifles or things like that and you want to use your electronic sights, you can place them in there as well. You can put torches in, walkie-talkies, anything that you think is going to help you in a grid down or EMP survival situation. Once you've got all this done, you're going to put the metal lid back on, which has also been lined, and you're going to seal it with metal HVAC tape. Now, for under 20 quid, you've just built yourself a homemade Faraday cage. They say you can test these things by putting a mobile phone inside that's on and then call it, and if it doesn't ring or it goes straight to voicemail, then your Faraday cage works. How much truth's in that, I don't know, but I'm sure you can find a way on Google on how to test your Faraday cage and ensure it's actually going to work in a real life situation. Now, I keep backup radios, backup walkie-talkies and an iPad with some survival books on inside one of these myself. It just stays there 24/7, even a couple of battery banks as well that I periodically take out to recharge. It's cheap, it's ugly, it doesn't look good, but it works. At least, I hope it does. Stay safe then, guys. Enjoy the next video that's right up here about now.